Welcome to the Couchboard podcast, where we naively talk about anything and everything for your listening pleasure. I am Jordan, and I have with me Max. How you doing, Max?
I am great. No
Excellent.
Colby today.
Colby, no show so far.
We don't know where he is.
Yep. Today...
He could be dead in a ditch.
Let's hope not. Today, though, we are going to be jumping into The Last of Us 2. The big part 2.
Not part 2. There you go.
So,
you got the name right.
That will be very exciting. But first, let's jump into what's been going on, Max. What's been going on in your life?
Well, we had 4th of July over the weekend.
That's right.
I baked a cake.
Nice.
Last week I said I was going to do a white cake. Didn't do a white cake. I went with a yellow cake with white frosting. And like raspberries and blueberries and strawberries to make it, American. Have a nice kind of flag theme-ish, but I didn't really make it a flag. I made a circular cake. I know I said I was going to do a flag cake. So anyways, I made a circular yellow cake, white frosting, red, white, and blue. It's delicious. In fact, I'm going to have a slice once we're done recording this episode.
Nice. Treat yourself.
Yeah, but it's hot. It's really hot out here in Phoenix right now. I mean, insanely hot. On 4th of July, I went outside I woke up. I am not an early morning riser, and I'm proud to say I got up before 5 to go out for a long run. Had ambitions of going out. Yeah, it is early. I had ambitions of going out on a 15, 17 mile run. Made it, went outside. It's like dark outside. The sun's not out yet. And you're like, it's going to be cool out here. No, I opened the door and it was just like hot. I'm like, oh, all right, whatever. Go out on my run. I usually run for a ways and then I come back to my house and refill with water and food and stuff and head out for another long leg of the run. So, I had run 10 miles, went home, drank a ton of water, refilled my water bottles, and I was like, all right. Time to get back out there and run another 5 or 7 miles. Walked back outside, took 10 steps back down the road, and I was like, nah. I'm out. Going back inside. Too hot. So
that was on Saturday?
That was on Saturday. It was it was by the time it was roughly around it was 7 sharp when I was going after I refueled and went back out to do leg 2. It was 7 in the morning, but it was already in the 90s and the sun was already high in the sky. It was just bad.
It's brutal. So
I don't know why I live here.
Yeah. I mean, well, it was high of, so I'm in Tucson and it was a high in 109
today or
on
the 4th of July?
On the 4th. So
I think we were 111.
Yeah, it's always hotter in Phoenix because they suck. So yeah, that's too much. It's too much, and it's like you said, it doesn't have enough time to cool down at night, so all that heat just stays there, and then you wake up in the morning and it's just brutal.
There,
still.
I mean, it does make a difference not having the sun outside. I mean, there's definitely a huge difference there, but I mean, the sun is out. Yeah. So many hours of the day, and it's just. Again, I don't know. I was like, well, do I need to be waking up before 4 if I want to? I can't do that. That just sounds totally insane. But anyways, how was your 4th? Did you smoke some meat?
I considered it. I was all
It seems like the most American thing you can do, and for all the meat you've been smoking lately, it just seems like you had to have smoked meat. But it sounds like you didn't.
I know. Well, I mean, it was Monday of last week. I got those 3 racks done, and that was nice. It was fun, but then we ate them kind of all week.
Yeah, so you're just couple days. I'm meated out.
Yeah, so I mean, we had a little cookout. We had hamburgers, hot dogs. Next best thing for 4th of July. Yeah,
still American.
Yeah, and I felt inspired by you making a cake, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a good idea. Let's make a cake too." And Melissa said, "Let's make a cheesecake." All right.
I've never done that before, but you have to do a water bath and all sorts of stuff, right? Am I right?
Yep. It's always fun. You got to have the right foil. If you don't have big enough foil, it's gonna leak no matter how many times you wrap wrap the pan, the cheesecake pan, it's gonna leak. If it's like the normal, 12-inch foil, you're done for. So you got to get like the bigger, heavy duty 18-inch or whatever, and then there's no gaps for the water to come in.
I see.
Make it all soggy. So did that.
So did you have the right foil or not?
I did. I had to get the right foil because for smoking stuff, you just need some bigger foil for ribs and stuff. So it worked out. Nice yellow Oreo crust. What do you call those? The white ones?
Yeah,
not white. But
I don't know what they're called. Yeah, golden, like
golden,
right? Or, yeah.
Yep. Did that for the crust. Smashed those up. Just a plain old vanilla, hint of lemon cheesecake. It's good. And just put some good old fashioned
berries on it.
Canned cherries. Yep. We were like, let's make a good glaze or something. And then we thought, you know what? Those canned cherries, they hit the spots, and so that's what we went with. The cheap old canned cherries. And
I'm not a huge fan of canned cherries, actually, but I'm glad that
they're sweet and
yeah, they are sweet.
Yummy.
So do you like cherry pie?
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of pies. Like,
I love pie.
Unless it's something chocolate pie related.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Then that would probably be like the last pie I would want. I love pie, but not necessarily. Chocolate ones are fine.
Yeah, but I usually steer clear of pies. Like Thanksgiving time, it's like,
you don't have a pie that you want on Thanksgiving at all? Like,
no, I don't. I don't really like
apple pie or pumpkin or pecan or.
No, I'll of course eat them all. I will, but if I had my way, I would just go for a cheesecake or something, or like a chocolate. Those frozen section chocolate mousse or whatever. I forget what they are.
You like a good rich dessert. It sounds like cheesecake and chocolate. Those are just like more like they're rich. Whereas like an apple pie, it's not so much. And I think that's why I'm thinking of my wife who, she doesn't really have like a huge sweet tooth, and so I think like pie is more appealing to her because like, pastry crust is. Yeah, there's a little bit of salt in it. It's not super sweet, and so I think, whereas I can eat sweets all day, every day. I can eat anything and everything. But cobblers on the other hand, I love me a good cobbler.
Peach cobbler, I'll dig into that for sure. But pies, I don't know. Haven't been able to get into them. So that was good for the weekend. And then a movie I watched it a while ago, but I forgot to mention it. But was the Mr. Rogers movie.
Is it good?
Fantastic. It started out with A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. That's what it's called.
Right.
It started off, and going into it, I was kind of like, Tom Hanks isn't Mr. Rogers. Like,
yeah, that's kind of how I felt when I saw the previews.
He doesn't. He's too big. He's not as skinny as Fred, and so it just that first like 2 or 3 minutes, I was like, this is lame. But then you just get lost in it, and it's like you're just remembering everything from watching Mr. Rogers growing up, and like it's a real touching movie, and I just really liked it. It was really good the way they tell the story about Fred, and couple. I guess he didn't really give many interviews over his lifetime, and so. The story is about a particular interview that he did give, and it was just great, magical, really good movie. Definitely suggested.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I like a good feel good movie, I guess, so I'll have to look at it. But but I agree with you. When I was seeing the previews, like he just didn't quite look like him, and I think it was because Mr. Rogers was so slim and so slender, and Tom Hanks isn't, no offense.
You could tell he took off weight for the movie, but
he's not like a Christian Bale who would like eat
an apple a day, literally.
Right, like
it wasn't like
for all the greatness we give to Tom Hanks. Come on, he's cutting corners over there. As we sit here talking about eating cheesecakes and chocolate pies.
Yeah. Yep. No, but he did great. By the end, not even by the end, a couple minutes into it, you're pulled in and you don't care. It seems like he's Fred Rogers to a T, So, yeah, beautiful day in the neighborhood, beautiful movie.
I'll have to check it out. Sounds interesting. Yeah, I've only run into one other person that actually saw it. One of my coworkers, and she really liked it. So I'll have to scope it out.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. I don't think there's too many other exciting things going on in my life right now. But let's jump right into this topic.
Alrighty. Let's talk. I'm excited.
Sounds like a real doozy. So, Last of Us. So I will preface this. Well, this will be a bit of an interview because I haven't played either of these Last of Us games. I don't know really much of anything about them. I've seen a couple trailers here and there, but pretty unfamiliar. So,
but I think that's a good thing that you don't, because we've got millions and millions of listeners that are listening to this podcast. Many of them haven't heard it either. So
Bingo.
This is going to be accessible to everyone, whether you've played the game or not.
Bingo. So, so don't, just because you haven't played the game, don't leave. This should be fun and entertaining for all, especially myself. So anyway, let's see. So The Last of Us was created by a company called Naughty Dog, and they're known for a couple things, right? I think they started with Crash Bandicoot.
I think they might have had something before, like way back in the day, but I think Crash Bandicoot is
kind of put them on
kind
the
of
map.
where we all trace the beginning of Naughty Dog back to.
And that's a cartoonish, what's his
platformer?
Yeah, and the character is a
Bandicoot,
ferret type of animal. I don't know what he is. Is a Bandicoot an animal? But
I'm assuming it's I guess I've never thought about it. All right, we're going to Google right now. Bandicoot.
He looks like a weasel, like a large weasel mixed with a fox. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, bandicoots are animals. Crash Bandicoot looks nothing like this thing, because like these things look like little tiny rats or something. But
maybe the world is super small and he's just big.
I mean, Crash Bandicoot was kind of like PlayStation's Mario to me. Like it was like their biggest platforming, like accessible to all ages and all audiences, game that they made their splash with. Yeah,
for sure. An exaggerated cartoon character, doing crazy things, jumping around, jumping on people. Anyway, so their next big hit from after Crash Bandicoot, a series of Crash Bandicoot games, was Uncharted. There's four of those? No?
Jak and Daxter. Jak and Daxter was that. So think of Crash Bandicoot as like the PlayStation generation, and then Jak and Daxter, they made 3 games for the PlayStation 2, which were also like very popular games. Like I played them all. I never played Crash Bandicoot because it didn't have an original PlayStation, but Jak and Daxter was a very popular platforming series for the PlayStation 2.
And that was that kind of in the same universe, so to speak? Or is it just also cartoony?
No, it wasn't in the same, like, story-wise or anything. No, it was its own thing. Okay. You play as, like, a guy. They're fun games, but it's definitely a bit more cartoony. And, like, the first one has a lot of similarities to Crash Bandicoot, but rather than, like, being, like, level-based, like, you're kind of, like, roaming around, like, a world, like a big world, like, searching for, I think they're called power cells, and then like there's like 100 of them in the game, and that's really the premise of them. But then Jak 2, the sequel, really kind of I think it was one of the first games to kind of rip off like the Grand Theft Auto formula. It was like open world, like go do missions and all that stuff, and then I think people really embraced it as being like a more what's the word? Not as like controversial video game as Grand Theft Auto.
Okay, cool. And then after a couple of those games, that's when they got into Uncharted.
Yep, and Uncharted's like a modern day Indiana Jones. And I would say you're right in the sense like Uncharted, I think, is really what propelled them to be
big,
like big, like very, very successful.
And they're just kind of fun third person shooter, explorer games, right?
Yep, with platforming as well. Like definitely like lots of climbing, lots of like jumping, definitely lots of shooting. But this, I would say Uncharted is where Naughty Dog, and this is really what they're becoming known for, is when they first started getting more into like, I mean, they definitely had elements of this with Jak and Daxter, but Uncharted is really kind of where they have these great stories with great characters, and like the games start to feel a little bit more cinematic. Like you're watching them, you're kind of playing through a movie. And if you watch like interviews with Naughty Dog leaders, like that's kind of what their bread and butter is now. Is like we are like very focused on more linear games with really great stories, and so Uncharted was kind of the foundation for really what you see from Naughty Dog today.
Yeah, whereas maybe previous games like like Crash and Jak and Daxter, you just hire maybe voice actors to put in a couple, a little bit of dialogue here and there, really sound effects maybe, but maybe in the Uncharted, it's really you're hiring actual actors to play the parts of the characters. It's kind of more, it's that much more involved.
I mean, Jak and Daxter, there's definitely a lot of voice acting, and there's definitely a decent story, but it's not like anything like anyone's talking about today where like, oh man, like the story in Jak and Daxter was so good. Like it's Jak and Daxter is like a funny, like very comedic kind of like slapstick kind of story, but no one, and again, feel free to write us and disagree with me. I mean, like it's a solid story, but just not at the same level as Uncharted Last of Us. And Uncharted is, I would say, like Uncharted is like when they start getting into like motion capture. Right. That's something that's really crazy about Naughty Dog. Like it, just the way like the characters move and interact with each other, like it feels very natural because they have the voice actors dress up like in these spandex suits with sensors all over their bodies and track their every movement. In fact, the voice actor for Nathan Drake, who's the main character of the Uncharted series, he was talking about how he was playing the game with his son, and like his son like kind of like hit him while he was like playing. He's like, "Dad, that's you!" Like just like because the way like Nathan Drake was like moving in like the game, like his mannerisms just made him think of his dad, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. It's not easy to do. I'm sure. Like I wonder how difficult and how much blood, sweat, and tears they put into doing that. But it really, it does make a big difference when you're invested in the story and you're watching characters like kind of like move around on screen. Yeah. I think it makes a big difference. Yeah, it starts to really feel like a full blown production of. Right. You've got almost a movie living within a video game. So you've got the acting and everything that goes into setting up the stage for the plot and the story, but then you also have the development, the software development side, the gameplay and all that, starting to mesh over top. So Uncharted really kind of put them on the map with these storytelling types of games. So now that we are kind of familiar with the Uncharted series and kind of what makes that different from some of their previous games, why don't you walk us through a little bit of The Last of Us, the part 1? What kind of a setting this game takes place in, and what's the gameplay like with this first part? Yeah. And then really for us to kind of get to the second one, it's kind of important that you understand the story of the first one, because what we're going to end up going with in this episode is there's been a lot of controversy over the last 2 weeks since the sequel came out, and there's a lot of really strong feelings about it, but none of those feelings will make sense.
That's what I've heard. I don't even follow video games, but this from like various outlets that I, podcasts and, YouTube videos I watch, like it's been making waves. So
it's been, like I'm looking at on Metacritic right now, like the critical like Metascore right now is a 94 and the user score is a 5.3. So it honestly kind of reminds, in fact, we should talk about that at the end of this episode, but it kind of reminds me of what happened with The Last Jedi, where, The Last Jedi received great critical praise, and then the average Joe just slammed the movie. But anyways.
Well, and to our audience, don't be surprised, but Colby himself has joined up. So,
woohoo!
There he is. There he is.
He is here.
All right. Take it away, Max.
So yeah, and I'll try and, as I'm summarizing the game, like, feel free to interrupt me. Interject your own opinions and thoughts. I'll try and ask you guys some questions and get your take, but especially towards the ending of the game, because that's kind of what's beloved about the original is how it ends. But anyway, so The Last of Us was kind of like an interesting splash for Naughty Dog, because, you know, when we talk about Uncharted, when we talk about Crash Bandicoot, when we talk about Jak and Daxter, like, those are all like very accessible to like kids and teenagers and just people of any age group, whereas like The Last of Us is notably a much more mature, violent, lots of F-bombs in the game. It's just it's set in a post-apocalyptic world, and the setting is there's been an outbreak of a fungus that they refer to as cordyceps, and it basically starts turning people into zombies. And I'll talk a little bit more about that and how it works.
When did this come out? Part 1?
2013, so 7 years ago.
So, okay, 13. So we were probably in the thick of zombie stuff.
We kind of were, yeah. Like, this was like, and it's like funny to wonder, like, because, you know, like, video game developments for like these big games, like it takes so many years, and so certainly by the time they started developing this game, that would have been the case that we were in.
So you're in season 4 of Walking Dead, so you'd been in the middle of it for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So the game opens up with a teenage girl. Her name's Sarah. She stays up late, but falls asleep on the couch, waiting for her dad to come home. He comes home. His name's Joel, and he's kind of annoyed with her for staying up late. But she stayed up late because she wanted to give him a gift. It was his birthday, and she somehow like had saved up a bunch of money. She bought her dad a watch, and you know, it's like very thoughtful of her. You're like, oh, this is a really nice girl. She ends up falling asleep, gets woken up in the middle of the night. I can't remember how, but she's walking around the house, seeing stuff on the news, like hearing like explosions outside. Joel comes into the house and is being chased by one of their neighbors, and has to kill his neighbor when he breaks in through the sliding glass door. So pretty quickly, you're just like, holy crap, like, this is pretty insane. They leave their house with Joel's brother. His name's Tommy. He comes and picks him up in their car and like, all right, we got to get out of here. And so they're ripping down the road. They're in Texas somewhere, I think somewhere around Austin. But of course, like, as they're going through the city, like, everything's on fire. I don't know why once there's a zombie apocalypse, all the buildings have to be on fire and everything's just going crazy. Wreck their car. It
just happened overnight.
Super fast.
Yeah, it happens quickly. I mean, like, when you're playing as Sarah and like going around the house, like, you can see like newspaper articles where like they're talking about, you know, they're talking disease about it, but like everything kind of blows up in one night.
So she's not at ground zero, but close to it.
It's kind of like one of the, and again, the game, that's one interesting thing about the game is like the game never really like gets like deep into like how it happened, why it happened. Like, it's kind of like it's just the setting or like the context for the game, but like not one of those things where like they spend a lot of time trying to explain that.
Which makes sense, because if that happened, all communication is a lot harder. You might not know exactly how it happened. So anyway.
That's a fair point. I like that. Yeah, so it is realistic. Thank you, Colby. But anyways, so what ends up happening? They wreck their car. Sarah, Joel's daughter, she hurts her leg, so he's carrying her, and like Tommy's running with them with a gun, like killing people as they're trying to intercept them. And they get separated. They're running up a path. The military's up at the top of this path, and the soldier stops them. And you're trying to get through, and he won't let you through. And then he's talking to someone on the radio, and then Joel gathers that whoever's on the other side of the radio is telling him to exterminate them. So Joel like tries to run away, and as he like spins around, the guy shoots at him, rolls down a hill, and the soldier goes after him. He's about to kill him, but fortunately Tommy shows up and kills the soldier. So you think like, okay, like everything's good, and then you hear like this whimpering on the ground, and it's Joel's daughter Sarah, and she had been shot. And it's like a really like, of all like the deaths in video games, like this one like feels like, again, because like what I was saying before, like it's all motion captured, it's all like acted by real actors. Like it just felt like it felt less cheesy. It felt like super real, as like Joel picks up his daughter and he's like trying to save her, and then he can't save her, and then like boom, like screen goes black, fast forwards 20 years, and Joel's living in Boston, and
20
you
years?
don't really, what's that?
It goes forward 20 years?
20 years, yep. So
Wow.
the game fast forwards like 20 years.
So
He's living in Boston.
So how old would she be, his daughter? How old is she when she
She's
gets
probably
shot?
like 13 or so.
Oh, okay. All right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's like, I mean, I remember, I think, like, you talk to anyone who loves this game, anyone who's played this game, like, everyone will remember kind of like the first time, like, they watched, like, Joel holding his daughter as she dies. It was just like, ugh, like, it's just, it's heavy, it's sad. But it's a really important part of what's to come in the story. So I'm going to try and move through the story quickly, but again, pause me as I go, because I'm trying to only give you like the bare minimum of the story, but again, enough so like you can make sense of why people are so enraged about the sequel. But so anyways, Joel's living in Boston. He's hanging out with this woman, Tess. They work together, and they don't really explain what they're doing, but they sound like smugglers. And so they're just kind of making their own living, kind of like doing illegal stuff. It's like kind of like a militarized world. Anyways, they end up bumping into a woman named Marlene, and she's the head of this. They're called the Fireflies, and they're like a rebel group. Like they're trying to think of like a good comparison to what they are, but it's like they're like trying to save the world, basically. Like they're trying to find like a cure. Like they have like a military and all this stuff. And she comes to them and is like, "Hey, I need you guys to smuggle something out of the city." And they're like, like we don't want to help you like smuggle stuff out of the city. And she's like, "No, I'll make it worth your while." I'm like, "Okay, fine." But then it turns out she wants them to smuggle a girl out of the city, and her name's Ellie. She's 13. Joel doesn't really want to do it, but Tess like, "Dude, she's offering us a lot of money. Like, let's do it." And so he's like, "Fine, like we'll smuggle her out." Anyways, as you're smuggling her out of the city, you notice, you find out that she's got a bite mark on her arm, and Joel's kind of like a rough and tough survivor guy, and he's just like, "I'm done with you. Like, I don't want to like smuggle an infected girl out of the city," because they say they usually turn in about 2 days. But she starts saying like, "Hey, I was bit 3 weeks ago, and I haven't turned into a zombie," which has never been heard of before, and he doesn't believe her. But they're kind of like in a tough spot where people are closing in on them, so they're like, "Fine, we'll just keep moving." So they keep smuggling her out. They're going through buildings, fighting off infected, trying to get their way out of Boston. And as they're kind of getting towards the end, Tess gets bit. And again, that's kind of been like, I'm assuming it's Joel's girlfriend, partner for like several years. And as like her like dying wish to him, she's like, "Hey, like my bite mark after like a few hours already looks worse than Ellie's after a few weeks. Like carry on like the torch." And he again doesn't want to do it, but she's like, "You've got to get this girl to the Fireflies. Like maybe like she is like she can help us find a cure, or like there's something unique here. Like we need to like see this through and get her to the Fireflies." And really, the only ticket to Joel doesn't really know where the Fireflies are, but as luck would have it, you remember Tommy, his brother from the beginning of the game?
Mm-hmm.
They mentioned that he used to run with the Fireflies, and so he does know where his brother Tommy is. So he's like, "All right, I'm going to go find him." So they travel across the country to Jackson, Wyoming, is where his brother Tommy is. And like the whole time, like Joel's kind of like a jerk to Ellie. And Ellie is kind of like a fun, like spunky Spitfire kind of girl. Like it's just like hard not to really like her character. And Joel's just kind of like rude to her, like shut up, you know, do, you know, like fall in line, do what I say kind of thing. When they make it to Jackson, he finds Tom and he's like, hey, like you owe me a favor, like you take this girl like to the Fireflies. And that kind of hurts Ellie's feelings because she's like, hey, like she's like, everyone has like abandoned me like my whole life. Like you and I thought we had like a good relationship, more or less. And like, I'm like, I can't believe like you're just gonna like abandon me with this guy that I don't even know. And he's just like, I don't care. And then she knows that Joel had Sarah and she's like, you know, like I'm not Sarah. And then like Joel's like super mad, like he does not ever want to talk about Sarah. Like he doesn't want to acknowledge it. But that is like, and what you kind of take away is like the player is like, he doesn't want to get close to Ellie because it's too painful for him. Like it reminds him too much of his daughter. But eventually like he changes his mind. He takes Ellie further across the country. They go to Colorado. Things go bad. The Fireflies weren't there. But they do find out where the Fireflies are actually hanging out, which is in Salt Lake City, Utah, believe it or not. So that's like the last place you go to in the game. And by the time you make it to Salt Lake, it's really kind of like a cool evolution of their relationship. They go from, like Joel goes from being kind of mean, kind of not friendly towards her, and then you can tell like how like he basically becomes like he really cares for her. He's really nice to her. Like they joke, and I think that's why one reason why people like this game so much is like, you know, over the course of like 20 hours, like it's just like this very gradual relationship that builds and builds and builds, and you just see like this kind of like fatherly relationship between these two people, and so you get super invested in it, and then you're really interested because like, all right, they're in Salt Lake, they found the Fireflies. Like what's going to happen with like Ellie? Like, are they going to be able to find a cure? Are they going to be able to find a vaccine? Like what's going to happen here? And as they're getting close to where the Fireflies are, they fall into a river. And Ellie can't swim, so she's like almost drowning, but Joel gets her out of the water, but the Fireflies find them like on the shore, and knock out Joel. He wakes up and like they're in a hospital where they're at, and Marlene, the woman who originally entrusted Ellie to you to transport across the country, she's like talking to you, and Joel's like, hey, where's Ellie? And she's like, oh, the doctors are running some tests on her. And he's like, huh, okay, like, and he's like, well, what's going on with like the tests? Like, what do they think? And she's like, well, they're positive that they can get a vaccine. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. Like, what does that mean? She's like, well, like they have to like harvest like the infection at the source. And he's like, oh, well, like the infection grows like on like the brainstem. It sounds like you're going to have to kill her. And Marlene's like, yeah, like she's going to die like during the operation. So I'm going to pause right there. And what do you think?
You can't pause there.
So
I'm gripped.
I'm sure you are. I mean, if I were to ask like the two of you, like, what do you do in that situation? I mean, what is the right answer? Like,
we just kill her.
Yeah.
Well, what's
interesting
is like it's implied that like Ellie, since she was like unconscious when they found her, like it's implied that she she stayed unconscious, like they anesthetized her and like ran the tests on her, and like so she's never been conscious. And so like the way I've always interpreted the game is like they've never talked with Ellie about any of this, which does like kind of bring up like an interesting moral dilemma, if you will.
In the game, do you have the choice, like escape?
No.
You just play it.
it's again, Naughty Dog's games are like very like story driven. Like there is like a point A and a point B, and like there's like obviously some deviation you can take along it, but like you're nothing like material that you can change the story. And in this game, there's no like branching dialogue or anything like that. So
yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's tricky.
So what happens, and this is why I think like it kind of like it's such an interesting video game, and why this is so different than like watching like a movie is like, so Joel's like, find somebody else. And again, the thing I love is that like I never you never explicitly get into like Joel's mind and hear what he's thinking, but kind of what you as the player assume is like he didn't want to get close to Ellie, like because like he lost Sarah, his daughter, and like it was so painful for him. And kind of what I assume is like, I can't like go through all of that all over again. So he's like, find someone else. And Marlene's like, there is no one else. And he's like, he kind of gets a little combative, and she orders like some soldiers to like remove him and lock him up until they finish the surgery, which of course Joel turns the tides on them as they're escorting him away. He kills his escorts, and then you go on a rampage through this hospital, killing like all these soldiers, like trying to make your way to the operating room. And it's just like a weird feeling because you're kind of like playing this like broken man who's just like killing lots of people all to stop them from saving mankind, basically, just so you can hang on to your relationship with this girl. But as the player, you also are kind of like selfish. Like I kind of like want him to succeed. Like I want him to like not save mankind because like I don't want this relationship to end.
Well, yeah,
which is easy to do. Sorry, go ahead, Jordan.
Oh, well, that's just it. It is easy. When you're playing a video game, it's really easy to kill the no-name characters.
Totally.
When you run through hallways and stuff. But if you were to really put that, if those were the only options, either you save Ellie or you kill her for the vaccine. I mean, is it really worth it to kill all those people in the hospital plus everybody else in the world that can't have the vaccine? So you don't want to think about that, but I mean, it's easy in a video game to just say, well, I'm going to save her and kill all these people and not think twice.
It totally is.
I can let the whole world die because it's not actually real.
Yeah.
Right. But like in real life, I think all of us would agree. It's like as painful and as difficult as it would be. I mean, it's like, you've got to like sacrifice the one person to save humanity. But again, in this moment, you're like rooting for this guy. You're like, no, like save her. So you go through killing all these people. You make it to the operating room, and there's a doctor who's about to start the surgery, and like you come in and he like has like a scalpel, and he kind of like holds it at you and is like no, like I won't let you do this. And it's like a fun, like you start walking towards him, and then he like comes at you with the scalpel, and then you like stop him, you disarm him, and then just like knife him in the neck with the scalpel and throw him into the wall. I mean, it's just like, holy crap. Like, you pick up Ellie, she's unconscious, and you start running through the hospital, and all these people are chasing after you. You make it to an elevator, you go down to the garage, you find a car, you get Ellie into the car, and then Marlene catches up with you. Of course, just one person catches up with you, and they have like the whole discussion.
You can't do this.
Right. And he just like shoots her in the stomach. And he's like, no, I'm like taking her. And she's like, fine, like, please just like let me live. And he like walks up to her and he's like, nah, you'll just come after her. And he shoots her in the head and drives off. So you're just like, what is happening? So anyways, he's leaving Salt Lake. He's on the freeway. Ellie wakes up in the back seat and she asks him like, hey, like, what happened? Like, did we find the fireflies? And he's like, yeah, like we found the fireflies. As it turns out, like they found other people that are immune like you, and they found dozens of them. And unfortunately, like there's nothing different about you. Like they couldn't find a cure. They couldn't find a vaccine. So Ellie is just like kind of like sad and disappointed. I mean, you can tell like, you know, she was hoping like she was going to be like the answer to stop this plague. they make it so they keep driving, and then they're going back to Jackson, Wyoming to hang out with Tommy and the community that he lives with. And as they're approaching the town, Ellie stops Joel and she's like, hey, like, she's like kind of being like all sad, and he's like, what's going on? She's like, hey, like, tell me like everything you said is the truth, like everything about the fireflies, like the cure, like tell me it's all true and I'll believe you, or tell me it's not true. Just like swear to me that it's true. And he looks her in the eyes and he's like, I swear. And then the end. That's the end of the game. So it's like, not only did he like kill all these people and doom mankind, but then he just he lies to her about what he did, and it just ends on like a very ambiguous note.
What a scallywag! Wow,
wow,
it's intense.
So, yeah, I mean, it's again, I loved the original, and I never wanted a sequel because I kind of liked. A lot of times I don't like an ambiguous ending, but that one, like, I really did kind of like the ambiguous ending. It's just kind of like a weird note to end on. It's like, I mean, like, and you can tell like Ellie's like still not like totally believing him. She's like a little bit skeptical, but I mean,
Yeah, it'd be nice. I mean, I think more movies, more video games like this do need to end like that and just leave you wondering, rather than sequel after sequel, trying to get more money out of things. But I get that at the same time as well. So, all right, that's quite the picture.
Yeah, does it make sense? Any questions? I guess the only thing I didn't really explain is when we talk about like people that are infected, like what the zombies actually look like. Like there's, I would say like the main like infected that's kind of scary in the game is they're called clickers, and I think we talked about this in another episode. But they have like fungus growing on them, and it ends up like growing on their face and covering up their eyes, and so they're blind and they can't see and they can only hear. But it just makes for some pretty tense moments where you've got these like zombies that can't see you and are going around like clicking, trying to find you through like sonar. And so those are pretty interesting. Those are pretty unique, cool looking characters.
Sounds like John Krasinski's stealing some ideas, huh?
Yeah, actually, no. Like, it is when I saw A Quiet Place. Like, yeah, I mean, it's not as extreme as A Quiet Place where you don't have to be that quiet. But there's also like different stages of folks that are infected. That movie. Anyways, so that's The Last of Us 1, 7 years ago.
All right. So from there, up until the last couple of weeks, I didn't hear much of anything about it aside from there was a trailer. So there was a trailer, an E3 trailer that, I don't know, looked interesting, but not knowing anything about the story, it was a little confusing. The trailer is, I think it was Ellie was like at a dance at like a party. Mm-hmm. Talking to this girl, dancing with this girl, and they're, I don't know. I don't remember what they said because, again, it didn't really make sense to me, given I didn't know anything about the games. But then it cuts from there to I think Ellie again, just going through a city and killing a bunch of people. Like there's just gameplay, just some demoing of what the game will be like. Then from there, like I said, I didn't really hear anything about it up until it was released.
Yeah, I mean, I think when they announced the sequel, it was a few years ago, I was actually kind of like a little bummed. I was like, I love the original. Like the original to me is like 10 out of 10 masterpiece. Like, and I always kind of have that attitude. It's like, let's not mess up a good thing. But again, when people love it so much and people need to make money, you can only avoid it for so long before they do the cash grab. That character. So the game takes place 4 years later, and this one's actually a lot easier to summarize. So we don't have to go into near as much detail, and we can get into kind of the mechanics and what people are so upset with. Which actually, they're so upset about something that happens in the first couple hours of the game. Were you going to say something, Jordan?
Yeah, Colby, did you play the first one at all?
You know, I didn't. I was still following video games pretty heavily when the first one was like just coming out, and so like it was on my list of ones that I'd like to play, but then I kind of stopped doing as many video games. I didn't get one of the newer consoles, so I never actually played it, and then I never heard about the second one because I don't follow it that closely anymore.
Okay. Cool. Well, so 4 years later, and we'll pause for a second and say, spoiler alerts for Last of Us Part 2. Be sure to, if you want to keep listening, just know that the game will be spoiled for you. I'm sure it will still be a fun game, but just know.
Yeah. So 4 years later, Ellie and Joel, they're living in Jackson, Wyoming. They have electricity there because they have like a dam. So like they have like a pretty like fully fledged like town and like community that they're living in. Like you said, Ellie, she was dancing with a woman in the trailer. That woman's name is Dina. She's a love interest of Ellie's, and they kind of fall in love like in the beginning of the game. But then there's also like some weird tension between her and Joel. Like her and Joel really aren't talking. They're not really saying much, and they don't really explain what's going on. So that's that. So you're playing as Ellie a little bit, but then like the game shifts like after like an hour. Then you start playing as another character named Abby. And this woman is like, she's got the biggest arms you've ever seen. I mean, she is just like, I mean, she could be like a UFC fighter. I mean, she is just like the strongest. I mean, they even like say in the game, I think they compare as like strong as like an ox, like arms as big as like the biggest dude like that you see in the game. She's just like ripped beyond belief, and she's an interesting character. But so she's like on the outskirts of Jackson, Wyoming, with a group of people, and you don't know what she's doing. But they talk about trying to find him, which I immediately was like, she's probably trying to find Joel, because Joel killed a bunch of people from Boston to Colorado to Salt Lake and he was in Pittsburgh. Like, he left a lot of bodies across the country. And in this world, it's so dark and evil. Like, you know, you kill people, like some people are going to come looking for revenge. So she's out scouting around, like trying to get closer to the town, and she stumbles into like a horde of infected and is like trying to escape them, and she is about to get overrun by them, but Joel and Tommy were out on like patrol. They find her, they save her, but they're getting kind of like overrun in this building. And so she's like, hey, like my friends and I were like camped out like at this lodge like a mile away, like let's go over there. So they jump on the horses that Joel and Tommy were on. They run, they go to this lodge there she and her friends are staying. And as you as the player, like, oh crap, like this probably isn't good, because like you can kind of, even though you don't know for sure, like I'm pretty sure these people are looking for Joel, and I'm pretty sure it's not for a good reason. So they like go into the lodge with like her group of friends, and like they're talking and everyone's being all like nice and friendly. It becomes like clear that Joel and Tommy like pick up that they know who they are, that they've heard of them. And like Tommy like asks him, he's like, oh, like you've heard of us? And Abby's like, yeah, we've heard of you. And she like picks up a shotgun and then shoots Joel in the leg with it, and just like blows apart one of his legs. Which was just like kind of shocking to me. I was like, oh, that's not good. Like, you just don't recover from getting shot like at point blank with a shot in the leg with a shotgun. I'm guessing I'm not going to be playing as Joel much in this game. But then it switches over to Ellie, who the town's on alert because Joel and Tommy haven't come back, so everyone's out looking for him, and she picks up on their trail. And so then I'm like, okay, good. Like, I'm in control of Ellie now. I'm gonna save him. You find the lodge, and you can hear like something going on inside there. And so you're going through the house, like trying to find where they are, and you can hear Joel yelling. And you go make your way down a basement, and you open up the door, and Joel's like on the ground, like bleeding a lot from his leg, and Abby's literally beating him with a golf club. across the face. And so Ellie bursts in to try and stop it, but there's other people in the room and they intercept her and tackle her to the ground. And that's when Abby and her friends are like, oh, like they're looking for us. Like, we've got to like finish this and get out of here. And so that's when, so they're like, Abby, like, finish it. So she's got this golf club and Joel's like already beaten half to death. And like Ellie's like pleading, she's like, Joel, like, get up and fight. And like, he kind of like, he can like barely lift like a finger. He kind of like lifts a finger like to kind of like acknowledge her. And then Abby just smashes his head in with the golf club and kills him. Which was, I don't know, it was a huge surprise to me. Like, I just did not expect them. Like, Joel is just like a beloved character. Like, everyone loves him. Like, it's like kind of like the equivalent of, I don't know, like killing like Luke Skywalker in like episode 5 or something like that. You just like don't expect like the main character to die in the sequel.
Yeah.
Quite like that. So a lot of people are upset about that. People are upset that Joel died. But another problem that happened with this game is like and this is a problem with any video game, like you're shipping out the game to like 1 million stores across the country. Like eventually like someone's going to get their hands on the game somehow, some way, and play it and leak all the spoilers out onto the internet. Mm-hmm. And that's what kind of happened with this game is the game had been spoiled for people. I didn't know, like I tried to stay off the internet as much as possible. I had no idea Joel was going to die, but I think a lot of people were already like super bitter and super angry coming into it. Which, you know, like if you read like a bunch of bullet points on like how the story's going to unfold, but you don't like actually experience it from end to end, I think like it's easy to like be, oh, that's dumb.
Yeah,
and, like,
you take a slant, you know, one way or the other without fully experiencing it. Yeah. Well, that's lame. So was it? And it was just leaked from. Yeah. Just a little ahead of time.
I think it was a couple weeks ahead of time, and I just stayed off like, you know, I stayed off like message boards or everything because like and again, I'm glad I didn't because I had no idea that was coming. It was a huge surprise to me. I just didn't think that they would kill like the main character of the first game that everyone loved. But then it kind of like, it was like the perfect spark for the game because like once like they kill him, like Ellie's like, she's on the ground like by the people and she's just like, I'm gonna like effing kill all you people, like you're all going to die, like every last one of you. And they decide not to kill her because they're like, yeah, we don't want to like kill her and we don't want to kill Tommy because we don't want to like enrage like this giant community that they're a part of. Like they'll come looking for us and they'll come kill us. So anyways, yeah, they don't kill Ellie and Tom because they don't want to have the whole town come after them. But as me as like the player, I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't care anything about this Abby person. Like she has to die and she has to die now. Like I'll do whatever it takes to kill her.
So does Abby have her own like crew, like a big rival group, or is it just like her and a couple people?
She does, but like, and this again, and I don't think we need to summarize the entire second game. But like she's from Seattle, and she's like, but like this like this was a totally a personal vendetta for her, and it comes out much later in the game. But you find out that Abby's dad was a Firefly, and she like lived with the Fireflies. They were in Salt Lake. Her dad was actually the surgeon that was going to operate on Ellie. So like, yeah, it was like it was a revenge quest for her, which again wasn't a huge surprise to me. Like I mean, maybe that her dad was like the doctor was a little bit of a surprise, but I mean, I was like, I think everyone most people when Joel died, like, yeah, like you went through a hospital and killed like a bunch of innocent people, and you just killed a bunch of people throughout like the country, some good, some bad. Like it doesn't matter if they're good or bad. Like you're gonna piss a bunch of people off, and people are gonna come looking for blood. So people are super mad about it, to the point where like they've been sending death threats to the actress that plays Abby, and they're like, "Oh, you killed Joel. Now I'm gonna kill you too." Which I'm like, okay, calm down, people.
Wow.
Like, holy smokes, like we don't need to. And I always wonder, like, are those people? I don't know what to make of why someone would ever think it's okay to issue a death threat to someone for playing a fictional character in a fictional story.
Well, and it's you also have to take a step back and realize that, I mean, actors are just paid to read and act the lines. They're not the writers.
She didn't write the story, but they are also issuing death threats to Neil Druckmann, who's the writer and the director of the game, but he was also the writer and the director of the original game too. But they're just incensed.
So we'll come back to controversy, but the game. So I imagine Ellie seeks revenge and tries to kill Abby, and maybe vice versa. I mean, how does the game end up?
So you end up going to Seattle. Tommy runs off to Seattle first because he doesn't want Ellie to go. He's like, I'll figure this out. But Ellie's like, screw that. Like, I'm gonna go too. And like, it's kind of like sad and interesting. I mean, like Ellie goes from like the happy kind of like spunky funny girl that you knew in the first game to just like
cold
I'm
killer.
angry, like I'm mad. And again, like I totally could like relate with how she was feeling because I was just like, yeah, like, and like when I first like showed up in Seattle, I was like, I just want to like run through this city and just like kill everyone until I find Abby, and that's kind of the path that the game sets you on. So yeah, really the bulk of the game takes place over 4 days in Seattle, and the first 4 days, like she's like kind of finding different people that are in like this like militia group that runs the city that Abby's a part of, and really like a lot of the same people that were in the room when Joel died, like she's like hunting them down, trying to figure out where Abby is. So she's like kind of killing them one by one, and until you get to day 4, where you've been like camping out like in this theater house like at nights, like as you and restocking and planning like your next moves to like go into different places in the city to track these people down. So you're there. Tommy finds you, and a couple other people from Jackson that came are there. But where the game takes a weird turn, and this is I think what people are most upset about is that Joel died. I think the second thing that people are upset about with is, so like on day 4, you're in this theater, and Abby shows up to the theater. So like you're trying to figure out where she is, but she just like shows up to you, guns blazing, and like you're kind of like in a standoff where she's holding someone hostage. She makes you give up your gun, and she's like, she's like threatening to kill you. And then like the game then goes back to day 1 of Seattle, but now you're playing as Abby, which kind of was like an interesting storytelling device, I guess. Because yeah, like you went through like all this stuff, like you get to like the climax, and then like right before you see like the resolution of it, then it's like, all right, rewinding back to the beginning, and now you're starting over as like the other end of this character spectrum, or the other side of this coin.
So you have a different perspective of what the world looks like through Abby's eyes.
Correct. Which I initially thought, like, oh, this will be short, because like you played as Abby for like a little bit, like in the very beginning of the game, and so I just assumed it was going to be short. And I still remember like going into like the pause menu, and like, you know, there's like a skill tree in the game, and like I realized like Abby had like this very like robust skill tree, and I was like, oh, like I'm going to be playing her as a while. And it was like kind of funny, you know, like I just don't like this character. Like I hate her because she killed Joel. Like I don't want to play as her, and so that was kind of like an interesting feeling too. Like I don't want to play as Abby, but I think that's another thing people are upset about, is like they didn't want to play as Abby. Like they hated Abby. She killed Joel. But the interesting thing was, and I listened to an interview with the game director. Is like, I fell into like their trap of like what they wanted to happen, which is basically as you play through Abby's story and you like see her flashbacks and you kind of see like things that happen to her, like you start empathizing with her more and you start relating with her more. So then you get back to that confrontation with Ellie and Abby and you're just like, I really don't want it. And it's like they're both kind of right in this situation. Like, I don't know if I want either of them to die. So but that was like the purpose of the game, I think, is like they wanted you to like take the character that you like and then have like this character that you hate and then just like kind of like put you in like this weird spot where it's like, oh, I don't know how to feel about her. But at least for me, and I know some people were never able to get past that Abby killed Joel. I don't know. I was just like, like I love Joel to death, but shoot, he probably kind of deserved to die.
Well, it's a lot like, sounds like everybody's stealing other people's ideas, because it's a lot like Walking Dead.
I've never watched Walking Dead. Yeah, so elaborate. Yeah, I'm curious how they're similar.
So, because you start off with Andrew Lincoln as the actor, and he plays Rick Grimes, and like you start off from the very beginning, season 1, like he's the person that wakes up. He's been in a hospital bed, and like the world's just falling apart with zombies, because every time someone dies, they turn into a zombie, and then the zombies can take a bite of you, and then you're a zombie, and so basically everybody's a zombie. But somehow he gets overlooked because he was in an accident and was now in a hospital bed, and he's been there for days. Mm-hmm. So from there, you follow Rick through season after season of him trying to protect himself, trying to protect his son, his wife, his friends, and the whole time, like, yes, they're battling zombies, but they also eventually battle other factions, these other human groups that are, you would think that, we're all still humans. Together. Yeah, exactly. Let's be friends, but that's just not how it works in a apocalyptic state. So, you're bound to hang on to what's yours. That's what you have to do in order to survive. Because even if you're the nicest person, other people are just jerks and will backstab you and take all your stuff. So over time, Rick and his group, they grow and they become the group that you're attached to, and Rick kind of starts to do like bad stuff, and you're like, I don't know here. He tries to regulate how many real people he kills, and over time those lines start to blur, and then enter Negan. Negan is essentially a ruthless dictator who rules not only his group, the Saviors, but a lot of other. He forces a lot of other people to pay taxes to him, essentially for protection, right? So he's a dictator running these other towns, protecting them from zombies and from other people, while taking all their stuff through taxes, essentially. So when Rick runs into Negan is terrible and brutally kills one of Rick's friends with a baseball bat to the head, and just destroys this guy. And so it's just like, whoa, Negan's a bad guy. He is the enemy. And so right away, you're still sticking with Rick's a good person, and now he's just out for revenge on Negan. That's what we're fighting. That's what we as the audience are fighting for. We got to take out Negan because Negan's bad. But then a couple seasons down the road, it kind of, Negan is overthrown, and then and Negan survives, and you start to learn more about him and how, when everything's first out, or before everything broke out with the virus and zombies, his wife died of cancer, and he was just a teacher, and he just became this dictator, this villain, out of necessity, out of the need to survive. And so, he didn't necessarily mean to become that, but in order to survive with he and his friends and his group, he had to then, start ruling with that iron fist, and make examples out of people. And then he did become like a bad person, but you start to see that it was for a purpose. It was because he was protecting he and his friends. And so, a couple seasons, a couple episodes really, kind of play off of that, being able to see things from his perspective. And then it really flips in this last season and makes the people, the Rick Grimes people, take a step back and think, oh, well, when we were killing some of these people, like, what were their lives like? What kind of life were they living? And so then you're kind of left questioning, like, because eventually Rick, like, kind of dies. I mean, he's not dead, but then you're left just feeling like, what was all this for as the Rick Grimes group? Like, what were we really fighting for? Like, we thought it was for good, but who were we eliminating? Who were we taking out? And what does life really mean? So they really flipped that perspective, similar to this. And it sounds like AMC should sue for stealing.
Yeah, because watching characters evolve and become not what you expect has never been done. But I guess AMC did that with Breaking Bad too, where yeah. But no, maybe that's like a zombie movie cliche where it's like, and it is what it is. Like, there really is no good guy and there really is no bad guy. But Joel kind of, to me, sounds like Rick, where he's like a product of this world, and like he just, in order to survive, like, you start doing. And in fact, I think that's one thing people are upset about, which I will say they have a point there. Like, Joel would never, ever, like, go out of his way, for the most part, to save someone else that he didn't know, like, or like to help a stranger. Like, in this world, it's just like, no, like, because that's how you survive. You survive by looking out for yourself, not looking out for other people. And I think they're upset that Joel ended up dying because, one, he went and saved Abby, and then two, he trusted Abby, which are two things that are kind of at odds with Joel's character. But even in like the original game, like, Joel definitely trusted like people that they were roaming with and traveling with, or that he met. And so I would say, like, yeah, it's true, it's not true. Like, they probably could have found a better way to land him in Abby's web, but they didn't. I mean, and again, I just have to keep saying, like, the guy, like, killed a bunch of people. Like, he's not really a good guy. We all love him to death and, like, think he's like this wonderful character, but again, you kill a bunch of people, there's going to be consequences, and in a post-apocalyptic world, those consequences are often death.
Maybe I'm like super naive, but I usually hate stories like this. Like, I hate stories where there's no good guy and you can't like relate to people. I don't know. I have a hard time with that. It drives me nuts a little bit. Because, like, even if you understand someone's past, and even if they had a really rough past, that doesn't negate their responsibility for their actions.
I don't think we're saying that, but I think that's the funny thing is, like, his responsibility isn't negated, but that doesn't mean that he does. I mean, like, you might do the right thing, Colby, in that situation, but that doesn't mean everyone would do the right thing.
Right. Totally. I completely understand. I don't know. I tend to lean on the side that most people are generally good and usually would choose the right thing. The vast majority of people.
Probably.
But like I said, maybe I'm naive. I don't know.
Yeah,
no, I agree with you.
I mean, if it had been 20 years, since his daughter died and they'd been living through this virus stuff, and then he finally, after all this time, developed a relationship, and then that was again taken away from him, like, you might see why he would go on a rampage and just kill people and be ruthless. But yeah, I think at the same time, you're right. Like, if you're running through the halls just shooting and killing, tons of people, like, you're just either a very cold and heartless person, or I don't know.
You're a murderous lunatic.
Yeah, I mean,
well, but also
one and the same, right?
20 years in this world, like, killing people, I'm sure doesn't really. It's not as difficult to, like, he's killed a bunch of people at this point.
And
but I
that's,
agree.
Well, that's where, going back to Walking Dead, that's the same thing with Rick. Like, in the very beginning, he was taking people in under his wing left and right. He got burned a couple times, and so, he learned from that, and he had a code that he lived by, like, again, checking how many people he had killed, how many people that he was taking in had killed, and like trying to weigh, like, okay, is this a good person? Is this a bad person? But then he just kind of gets to a point where it's like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I'm just protecting what I've got against all odds. Like, this is my group, and even within his own group, he starts to butt heads with people and stuff. So yeah, and I don't think Walking Dead hasn't been 20 years. So I mean, if all bets are off after living in that kind of lifestyle.
I'm sure there's some mental and emotional damage that's done to a person in those situations, but you also think that you might start really respecting the sanctity of life since there's so little of it.
That's what you
anymore.
Yeah, that's what I always think. Like again, just because I watch Walking Dead versus play this game, I just think, like, okay, how many of these zombies are actually left? Like, yes, when people die, they turn into zombies, but how many of these tons of zombies are there out there after 5, 6, 7, 8 years? Like, couldn't you have just all got together and killed all these things and then start to really get into finding a cure and stuff? So I don't know,
or at least like built a sufficient sanctuary. I don't know. I actually think the whole zombie genre, people like got super into it because it really is just an excuse to go on a murderous rampage. It's like, well, they're not really people anymore, so it's totally morally okay if you just vaporize all of them. Like, and so the whole
is it not okay?
Are
they still really human, Colby?
If there's a potential cure, then you got to say that perhaps they could be human again. So is it really moral to kill a zombie if there could be a cure for it?
Colby, you should write a book, The Ethics of Zombies.
There are no ethics of zombies. That's why people like them so much.
Well, I mean, it's interesting, right? I mean, a year ago, these zombie movies, video games, what have you, they were almost laughable. Like, we would never get to that. Would never happen.
I know.
But now with COVID, it's like, bam! Like, in a matter of weeks, like, things drastically change. Like, now everyone's locked in their house. Then, there's a number of protests and things going on that change, like, just the atmosphere of your community, your country. And so it's just like, things can change pretty quickly. So, I mean, if there were actually zombies running into your house and eating you, I mean, like, you gotta imagine, like, how much faster things would hit the fan.
Sure, and obviously in self-defense, you're gonna defend yourself and your family or whatever. But there's definitely some interesting moral questions there. So going back to the game, though, how early into that does Joel die?
It's like within 2 or 3 hours.
And how many hours long is the game about?
I'd say it's about 25 or 30.
Oh, wow.
It's a pretty long game. It's longer than the original. In fact, if there's one thing I didn't love about the game is, like, there's a couple moments that are a little slow, that felt a little bit tedious, whereas the first one didn't really have those. But yeah, he dies. He died. I pre-ordered it. I was playing it the night it came out, and I went to bed like right after Joel died, and was just kind of in shock that they killed him.
Interesting.
But I wasn't ever mad. I wasn't ever like upset about it. Well, I was mad in the sense like I want to go kill Abby, but I wasn't like mad that I was like, no, like, he probably deserved whatever he got, and I'm sure I'll figure out why Abby did it, and you do find that out. But I mean, to your point, Colby, it's like he killed innocent people and he doomed mankind. Like, he's hardly a hero.
Yeah, it's a pretty gutsy move, killing off a character like that early.
It is, and I think, but I also kind of appreciate that because I think, like, the writers didn't give you what you wanted. They didn't, and I think that takes courage for a writer to, like, give the fans and again, now they're paying a heavy price for it. But for me, I was like, like, I appreciated, like, kind of having the rug yanked out from underneath me. And again, like it was believable, you know, like it wasn't just like we're killing this guy to kill him. It's like, no, yeah, like there probably would be people that would actively be looking for him and actively want to kill him.
So it's like The Sixth Sense, not The Village.
How so?
That it's a good twist. You're saying?
Yeah, Village twist. I hated that twist. Yeah. So, yeah, he dies pretty early on.
A lot of it depends, I think. Like, are they gonna make another one?
I think they this game sold like 4 million copies. Like, I can't remember within like how many days. It's been the fastest selling PS4 exclusive. So it's doing phenomenally well despite the backlash from fans. The end. Do you want to know how it ends? I'm sure you guys probably don't care how it ends.
I'm never gonna play it, I don't think.
Basically, what happens at the end is, again, like that device that the writers use, where you go through like the first half as Ellie, and then you kind of start back over. Like, I was fine with it. It helped me empathize with Abby, but it definitely did feel like it took some of the momentum out of the game. Especially because it's like, oh, now I'm starting over, and now I just want to get back to where I was in this story. So Abby, you have that confrontation in like the theater house. Fight breaks out. Abby's obviously much stronger and much more adept at fighting than anyone else, and is just beating the crap out of everyone, and is like going to kill her. I mean, she breaks Ellie's arm. And is just gonna kill them all. And then she went to the place with a kid she had saved, and he basically, and at this point she's become, like, over these last few days, she's become like a better person and like less cold-hearted, less cold-blooded. And so he like kind of stops her, and she's like, okay, like what's done is done. Like, you know, let's go our separate ways. Like, I don't ever want to see you guys again. Don't. And so she leaves. And so Ellie's living with her girlfriend for probably like a year or so, and still having a hard time coming to terms with stuff, and like having like some PTSD from Joel dying and all that stuff. And
did she ever find out that she was the cure, potentially?
Does Abby?
Ellie.
No, Ellie. Does she know that she
does Ellie know? Does Ellie know that? Yeah, she does find... there's a lot of flashbacks in the game. But... So this game takes place 4 years after the original, and 2 years after the original, so like sandwiched right between the two games. She went back to Salt Lake and went to the hospital and found like a recorder where the doctor was talking about the surgery. And so she finds out that, yeah, she would have been a vaccine for it. And that's why her and Joel were on bad terms. Like, she was irate and like, that was what I was telling you guys about like last week. It was like a very real, believable scene when like she finds out and she like confronts Joel and like makes Joel tell her. She's just like bursts like into tears and is like so mad and so angry at him. And so that's why their relationship was not good, and they weren't really talking. So yeah, she did find out.
That'd be tough to live with, huh?
Well, yeah, and it's also like kind of what the game implies is like the Fireflies kind of like disbanded after Marlene, their leader, died, and after Joel killed them all. Like, and so like, what is that? What's Ellie supposed to do? You know, like, just go find a doctor in this post-apocalyptic world that can kill her and make a vaccine out of her infection? Like, I mean, it's just like, she's just, I don't know, she's just kind of like, she hasn't really proactively done anything about it. She's just been kind of living her life. But anyways, what ends up happening, the way the game ends is, so Tommy figures out where Abby is. She's out in California. And what she's actually doing, she's looking for the Fireflies. And so, like, Ellie's like, I'm going to go. And her girlfriend, Dina's like, dude, like, don't go. Like, it's not worth it. Like, I don't want you to die. Like, I thought we buried this. And she's like, no, like, I'm going to go. So she goes travels all the way out to California. And Abby has been like taken prisoner by like a, what do you want to call, like a faction out there in California. And you're basically killing a bunch of people in this faction. They live in a resort. You find Abby and the boy that she saved, and they're like, they try to escape, and so like they're like tied up, and they're basically just starving them to death. So Ellie saves them, and they make it to some docks to escape. But Ellie's like, no, like, Abby, we're going to kill each other, basically. Let's do this. And Abby's like, no, like, I really don't want to fight you. And Ellie puts like a knife to the boy's neck and was like, no, like, we're gonna do this. And so Abby's like, fine, like, let's do it. So you have like one last brawl in the ocean, and Ellie's got a knife, and like she's stabbing her, and like they're at one point, like, she's drowning Abby in the water, and Abby bites off 2 of her fingers. Like, it gets really it gets really gruesome. But she's drowning. Abby's just like hasn't eaten. She's been a prisoner for months, and she was like on starvation, so she's super weak. And so Ellie's got the upper hand, and she's drowning her in the water.
She's lost all those gains, huh?
What's that?
She's lost all those gains, huh?
Gains?
Her muscle gains.
Oh.
She's so ripped.
She was still ripped. But yeah, they didn't. I don't think they altered her character model at all. Anyways.
Fake. So ridiculous.
She's drowning her in the ocean, and she has like a flashback of Joel. And this is another thing people are upset about, which, again, I don't have a problem with this, but I can understand why people are upset about it. But she has a flashback of Joel, and then she like lets Abby go. And the game like eventually reveals what like that flashback or what that memory was. And so basically the game reveals, and I don't know exactly when this happens in the storyline, but I gathered it was pretty soon before Joel died, that Ellie goes to Joel's house and kind of confronts him, and is talking about like what he did. And it's a great scene. So she's like talking to him, and she's like, hey, like, my life like could have meant something. Like, it could have saved people. Like, and you robbed me of that. And she's just like, and I like hate you for that. And you can tell like it really hurts Joel, because Joel just like loves Ellie through and through, and like hearing her like say she hates him like pains him. And Joel's response to her, and he's like all sad, he's like, like, if the good Lord gave me another chance to do that whole thing all over again, I would do it all exactly the same. So like he's just like, I'm like I hear you, but I'm not changing it, or I wouldn't change a thing. And Ellie was like, like, I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you for that, but I want to try. And that's kind of like what I took away, is like, I think she just like had like at the end of like this long journey and all this bloodshed, I think she kind of like woke up to the fact like, yeah, Abby probably had her own reasons for killing Joel. And it's time for me just to like move on and forgive her. Which again, I usually hate like revenge tales where like they kill like all the underlings, and then finally when they get to the kingpin at the end, they're like, nah, enough people have died at this point. Like, I usually hate that, but in this case, I don't know. I thought it was fine. So basically, they go their separate ways. Ellie goes back to her home to be with her girlfriend, and she's not there anymore, and that's kind of like how the game ended.
So kind of open-ended. Could be open-ended.
Kind of like how the original. I'm sure they will make a sequel. I'm sure they will. Again, the game was great. The gameplay was fun. It was way scarier than the original. Like, there was some there were some intense moments. But even after all that, like, I really enjoyed the story. Like, I don't fall into like the haters camp. Like, in fact, I was surprised when I went online after I finished the game, because I wanted to read about what people were saying. I was shocked that so many people were so upset about this game. But even after all that, like, I don't know if like it was a sequel that we needed. Like I said at the beginning, I really liked how the first one ended on that like ambiguous ending, and I don't know if this sequel was good enough to justify adding on to that perfect ending for the original. So I give it a solid 8.5 out of 10.
Wow, 8.5, not bad. Yeah. So, like the Star Wars sequels, this sequel did not need to happen. Is that right?
Correct. Correct.
Good.
Which
good.
We didn't talk about that in our updates at the beginning of the episode, that the rumors that they might be trying to negate the Star Wars sequels, but
hopefully
I read something else that said that's definitely not true, but one can hope.
I couldn't see Disney doing that. Just it seems pretty ridiculous to throw away all that work.
Well, I don't know if it's not that they would throw them away, but that they would be like,
they would be written off, sort of. They'd still exist, but they would not be official. It just seems kind of dumb.
Yeah, it does seem a little preposterous.
I heard that they were more going to retcon them and try and like just change or explain details that makes them seem like it happened differently or things meant something different, which I think is silly too, because that's what they tried to do all through the sequels and it didn't work. So anyways,
now you know why people are so upset about The Last of Us Part 2.
I did hear a YouTuber who was pretty upset.
What was the YouTuber saying?
I didn't listen. I was listening to him talk about something else, and he's like, "I'm going to talk about this because that's not the way Joel should have gone out of this world," or something like that. Yeah.
Which I just don't understand. I get that, but it's like, well, like, how is Joel supposed to die? I don't know.
Yeah.
He's not invincible. But
so do you play as Joel for the whole first game, essentially? Not the whole thing, but the majority of it?
There's a brief part of the game where you play as Ellie for probably like 2 hours or so, because he gets horrifically injured and he gets an infection from that injury, and so she's like out. Basically, she ends up like finding like antibiotics and stuff, but she also gets into trouble in that process. But she's like basically out trying to save Joel for a couple hours. But yeah, you basically play as Joel the entire game for the most part.
That is hard.
Probably like 85%.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's a great character. I mean, I'm as sad as anyone that he died. I guess where I just don't agree with a lot of people is that I don't really have a huge problem with the how he died. But and again, I just don't think like they wanted to like send you off like on this like crazy angry revenge quest, and if anyone else had died, I wouldn't have really cared that much. But since it was Joel, I was like, people have to pay. And then again, it was just like this weird experience where when I was playing as Abby, I was just like, yeah, like I still wouldn't say I like Abby, but it's just like I'm okay with her, and I don't really hate her as much.
I hate her.
I do. I absolutely hate her.
Shouldn't have killed Joel.
But see, that's hard because
he killed her dad.
It seems like I wouldn't really like any of the characters in the game.
You'd probably like Ellie in the first one.
Probably Ellie in the first one.
Yeah, and again, it's hard. I mean, again, like I'm giving you like 20 hours of story in 5 minutes, so it's like hard for you to kind of appreciate how like again, like, and that's the problem I think people had with the sequel is like you read someone summarize a game online and you're like, wait, what? Joel dies? Wait, what? I have to play as the killer? This is stupid. Like, I hate this game. And it's just like, yeah, I'm sure I would have not liked that either if I had read that, but since I just kind of went through the story as it was intended, for me, it was fine. But nothing's perfect.
Nothing's perfect. Except for
the prequels. All right.
How dare you finish my sentence that way?
Oh, go ahead.
I don't know what I was going to say. Boromir's death was perfect.
Boromir's death was a good one.
Yeah.
Touche.
All
right. Well, good. I think we can all agree the prequels are the best Star Wars movies. All right, we gotta go. Bye.
Oh,
no, I appreciate it, Max. That is Now I don't have to play the games.
Now you don't have to watch the HBO series when it comes out.
Oh, they're making a series. Interesting.
Yeah, they're making which I think, I'm actually, because video game movies and just are always terrible. In fact, is there a solid video game movie that's ever been besides Super Mario?
I feel like there's been one or two recent, like Sonic was a big hit.
Yeah, I haven't seen Sonic yet. I've heard it's okay.
Sonic was good.
I'm thinking though of like no cartoon, like a actual like mainstream.
So it sounds like they're turning to video games for new movie ideas. Well, or entertainment ideas. You got this Last of Us series,
Kingdom Hearts.
What else? Fallout.
They're making actually an Uncharted movie. I forgot to mention that when we were talking about Uncharted at the beginning. Tom Holland is going to be the main Nathan Drake.
Are they making a Fallout show?
I just heard about Fallout being. I don't know if it's a show or a movie. I think a show.
Huh.
Fallout would have a lot of similarities to The Last of Us, post-apocalyptic.
Yeah.
Fallen.
Except
world.
a little more lighthearted.
Yeah.
And goofy.
Fallout's weird.
Yeah.
It's an interesting series. I've really only played Fallout 4, so I know people don't love that one as much as the others, so I guess I shouldn't be speaking about it.
Fallout 3 is like the favorite, I feel like.
Yeah, I think everyone, and I never got in. I've never touched it. I've never played it for a minute.
It's on my Amazon wish list. Maybe I'll get it and play it one day.
Not that it was like the video games, but The Witcher, I think really
was it good? I didn't see the show.
I didn't see it, but I think it was a hit with the people that were fans of the video game. Though
I think the book fans liked it too. I think it was a fairly decent adaptation.
So,
I've never read the books or played the games, but I did watch the show edited, and I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think they're putting more effort into it. I feel like the previous video game movie adaptations we've seen have been kind of, not a full blown like, all right, let's make this a good movie. It's been kind of like, hey, let's just take this idea and make a movie out of it without really consulting like the avid fans and I don't know, what has there been? World of Warcraft.
Oh, Warcraft movie.
We've already talked about that on this podcast.
That's right.
I just don't think, and I didn't see it, so who knows? But it definitely wasn't well received.
Colby's got the poster in his room.
Yeah, I watched it. It was an experience.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think the people are done with comic book movies and need another nerdy thing to make movies about.
I think would make a killer movie is a Metroid game.
Yeah.
I don't think that would make a good movie actually, because it's so like exploration based. Like, what would be?
It is
like
but it could be creepy. You just have to add some character development and dialogue. So maybe she talks to her ship like computer or something, or she's talking to whoever hired her over the intercom.
Talking to a ship.
But it would be creepy and cool. Or they could put a Chozo ghost that she finds that accompanies her.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Metroid Prime is like one of my favorite games of all time, and I've often wondered, like, would Metroid make like a good movie? And that's just the thing that I struggle with. Like, I think so much of the fun of Metroid is going out and exploring.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the fun of the Zelda games too, and I always thought Zelda would make a killer movie. But then I think the biggest problem is you don't really. I mean, for the vast swaths of the game, you're just alone walking around.
Right.
So you got to find a way to have some dialogue during that, but.
Yeah, but you could throw the villains and stuff in there, and I don't know, bad guys.
Yeah, or the fairy or whatever. Throw in some companions.
I always thought Assassin's Creed of all the video games had the best formula for a movie, but then that movie didn't really pan out super well. So.
I didn't hate that movie, but if they didn't really,
I wouldn't say I hated it, but it definitely wasn't good.
But they didn't directly adapt any of the games either. Maybe if they...
Which I also didn't have a problem with either.
Yeah, but maybe it would have ended up better if they had. I don't know.
Maybe. What I think the biggest problem it had was they spent way too much time like in the present modern day world and not enough time exploring the history. And again, I get that's more expensive and requires a bigger budget and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But
it's true.
All right, we've been rambling a while here, so
yeah.
Shut us down, Jordan.
Record time. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Feel free to send us a message. Let us know what else you want to hear about. You can get us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all at The Couchboard, or email us at thecouchboard@gmail.com. All right. Hope you all enjoyed. I know I certainly did. Thank you, Max. And thanks, guys. Have a good night.
See ya.
See ya.